My wiring loom's coming along okay. I've had it onto the engine just to check the distances for the airflow meter. I'm trying something a bit different, going over the front of the spark plug covers instead of going along the side of the engine, which also means I've shortened up the oxygen sensor wire on the right hand side, and it's going to go under the manifold. For that, I've put this heat proof material on. It is flame proof, it takes a hiding, and I would aim it if I could find my flaming device. We'll show you how good this is. Woof! In my face. Yeah, there we go. No problem at all. So that's going to go under the exhaust manifold. We've got the earth, and this side is all finished off in braid with a bit of cloth tape in the tricky bits. New injector plugs. Actually, every single plug in there is brand new, along with the airflow meter and the igniter plugs. I'm going to work my way along the back now. The main start trigger is going to come out because that's in the other loom running off to buy the battery. The trick that I found is I used this delicate wiring tool, rip a couple of holes in the plastic covers, and zip tie or cable tie, if you want to call them cable ties, the wires into the covers, and they don't fall out, don't go everywhere, keeps it all contained. So it makes things a bit faster. So if I continue, gearbox loom to come out, main start loom to come out, and then that side, until I wind up and try and put that on. Bets that I can get that on?
What are you trying to put it on?
Here.
Oh, yeah, no, it'll fit on there.
It's going to take me to get that on.
Onto the loom?
Onto the loom.
I don't know, a little while I'd say.
Didn't take me long to get it off, but we'll see.
I hear you're a 3 minute in.
My assistant isn't always the most helpful. We've changed sides. I've done this to the wiring loom, and I've turned on my disco lights because it's getting dark. On this one, I didn't have an exact plan, a couple of little options, but I have a goal. The goal is to make a wiring loom that will run in the Hilux. So that's the goal. We're going to stick with that. Sometimes I recycle gearbox looms. On this case, I need a couple of extra big wires. So I'm actually going to pop some gearbox loom wires out of this loom and amalgamate them into this loom. So out of the V6 into the Lexus loom. I've shown removal of gearbox loom lots, so I'm not going to bring it into this one. We're going to pop all them out. I've removed the start trigger wire, and so I've just got a Deutsch plug on the knock sensors. And I'll work through here. However, I do need to run some extra wires for that diff wiring, the 2 extra wires. The diagnostic plug will be modified, so I can get communications with that diagnostic plug. And it will have the extra wires as required, or it'll be swapped over to include the extra wires from the V6. So the diagnostic plug will work for the V6 functions that it had in its diagnostic box. The fan switch, I'm not going to put in this loom at all. Normally I would, it's sort of my standard loom, but I'm going to put air conditioning in, the trigger for the air conditioning, because that was in the V6 loom. And I'm going to put in the 2 extra wires for the diff and oil pressure. That's all on. So there's going to be 4 extra wires down the left hand side of the engine and the diagnostic plug modified. Gearbox loom, as I said, is coming out, so that's about to come out, at which point I'll consider changing this boot. So at some point through the magic of video editing, that boot will disappear. And fingers crossed this one will reappear. So a couple of notes while I'm taking this gearbox loom out is a lot of people, when you're converting a 1UZ to a manual, they say you have to trick the computer into thinking that it is a manual, that the auto is not there. Now if you've got a VVTi, there is some kind of truth in that. It relies on some signals from the gearbox, which are some of the parameters needed for the VVTi to work correctly. However, on the early ones, the default setting without any signals is in drive. So there's no real need to trick, inverted commas. So there's no real need to actually trick the ECU. It's actually just a matter of you have to wire it correctly. So if wiring it correctly is tricking it, then you have to trick it. But most people, when they try to trick them, actually stuff it up, put the neutral start switch in incorrectly. The computer then gets a back feed through that circuit, thinks it's in park or neutral all the time, and makes about half as much power as it should make. So this tricking is a bit of a myth, really. So I really prefer is you have to wire them correctly. So it really is just a matter of removing the gearbox wiring correctly, and the computer will work correctly. And it kind of seems funny to be taking all these wires out when I need other wires to do the jobs. But it will kind of make more sense as I go through the process, and you'll see why I do it this way for this particular job. And each job's a little bit different. No two wiring jobs are ever the same. Similar, but not the same. So it annoys me a little bit when guys don't take the transloom out, because it's actually quite easy to do. Comes out nicely, it's in one piece. Very, very simple to work with, and it gets just rid of the possibility of problems at the back end there. These little connectors here are little bridging connectors with a whole lot of earth. They're actually all joined together. I don't want to break my tool, so we'll pop this open in here and have a bit of a look. So there it is in the back there. It's all joined together, all the little connectors. Some of them are cut depending on which model it is, different kinds of joiners. So make sure you've got that on there, that you just don't have this weird plug with all these extra earths. So I hope you've been paying attention, because this happened. Told you I was going to do it. Loop. That happened. Whoop woo! Now all I have to do is slip that one back in. That looks like a tiny hole. Now we have to use some lube here because I just don't have enough saliva for this job. I made that look easy. That went much better than expected. Normally when you got the camera on and you're trying to do this, it's an absolute prick. But we're done. Now all I have to do is put those back on. This is not one of my normal looms. I do tend to be a bit of a fussy prick, but I'm not normally quite this fussy. But this, I'm trying to make this vehicle look as standard as I can, within reason. So there's black silicone on the air intake, and whilst I'm putting braid on the loom, I'm trying to get it looking good, but still kind of standard. This loom is taking me quite a lot longer than normal, hence again, not normal loom. But that's pretty normal on the conversions that I do in-house. I spend quite a bit more time getting them just how I want them to be. So I'm going to put some plugs back on and continue making this loom how it should be, as if Toyota did it. You will have noticed that this is the 26 pin plug off the V6 loom, and this is the 26 pin plug off the UCF20 loom, the Celsius loom, and you'll notice that they are the same, which is kind of cool. Pity they didn't have the same pinouts. I'm going to put that on my side. This one's a little tidy up. And we've got our measurements. It was 450 from the back of the grommet to these plugs here. This is sitting at about 500 at the moment. ECU's has grown, has got a little bit longer. That'll be okay. We should be able to split that off okay. There's fuel pump triggers. We can work with it. So now we grab this. "12 volt to injectors and coils," and we pin it up appropriately. We start swapping wires, putting wires over. Once I peel the tape off. So that's coils and injectors. On the V6 they're joined, on the Lexus they're separate, on the UZ. So I'm actually going to whip back and make a couple of changes in that, put a bigger wire for both of them. Comparing it to the V6, you can see I do actually have some diagrams. Just when you want to find it and you can't. Oh, it is that one. It's that one there. All right, we're okay. Pop a crimp on that. That was like disco lights. Looking at the plug, get that correct. Number one's done. Number two is for the four-wheel drive. Number three is TS in the diagnostic, which does exist. Pretty similar. So here I compare where TS is. It's a green wire in here. 2 possible green wires. I'll just trace it. We know it's in the diagnostic box. It is that one. And I just happen to have terminals to suit these, which is really, really handy. We just confirm. 1, 2, 3. Easy. That'll come from that other loom. Diff, 6 is empty. Oil pressure light is going to be one out of the ECU. It's actually going to be one of these ones. What I've just done is I've taken the 2 hydraulic fan wiring control wires from the ECU. They're really good because they come down into the front loom. So I often join them together for oil pressure, but this one I've split them apart. One will do oil pressure and one will do the air conditioning. So I've just popped them in, matching them up on the pins. Number 20 is an important one. So number 20 there. So number 20 is going to be that one. And that one, which is solenoids. So the same thing, I'll join them together. Will confirm, because it is a bit late at night. So what I've done there, these are from the main relay, and they go to the stepper motor and to like all the solenoids, the breather for the fuel tank. And the airflow meter, I believe. Blue back, diagnostic. Black, red, yep, we're good. So I'm just going to work my way through all those wires, matching this diagram with this diagram, trying to amalgamate the two together and use as many as I can before I go on to pull some wires out of that loom to put in here as well. What's really nice when you do get one that you come along that is the same terminal and you can just pop it in the right hole. So that was a yellow green, which is pretty common on Toyotas. Yellow green over here for auto temp. So that's quite a nice one. Now a job like this can be a bit overwhelming if you haven't done it before. But one of the tricks I find is just to slow down and one wire at a time. Just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. You do each wire, one wire, you do the whole loom, one wire at a time. And if you do that, you will get to the end. So you find that wire, you work out what you think it's going to be. I think it's going to be the tacho, this one. I have an advantage because I know where it goes. There it is. It's also there, but it's also like the igniters. Igniters are over here. Extra wire in the igniters. That one there. Yep, that's the tacho. Just match it with here. Number 13. It's over here. And it goes. It's the right length and everything. I'm getting down to my wire, number of wires. I'll get rid of all of these before I start moving on to the next one. Well, I'll get rid of most of these anyway before I move on to the next ones. I also recommend that even if you have diagrams, that it is worth the time just to double check everything. That one's better. I thought it was the wrong one. Put your multimeter over it. A lot of people work on the colours on these looms and they get all upset, or they have a bit of trouble when the colours don't match. I've worked on enough of these now to not really bother so much with colours. Hey, it's nice when they all are the same, but I know which ones and which ECUs are close enough in pinouts that the colours don't matter too much. So a few of the basics, and by knowing what the pins do and how to check them, it can speed the process up and you don't have to go on colour. I find pin position is much more critical than colour. Well, I was actually closer than I thought. I popped in here and there was a extra little wire that went out for the cruise control. That's the idle switch. Those two are my fuel pump. These are for diagnostics, and one of them is the check light. The last diagnostic wire is in the 28 pin plug. And over here I've got a big earth, which I may not actually need. Options out in the diagnostic box, which won't be used. That was for the hydraulic fan. 2 cruise control wires. They're going to be repurposed. That's a pretty trendy word these days, eh? Repurposed, reuse, recycle. Well, I'm going to use those for the diagnostic wires. So I'll pop them over there with those diagnostic wires. You see, here's the join for one of the other diagnostic wires. So that goes out to the diagnostic box, and then it would go to the normal scan tool port in the cabin. So going over here, we're going to move some wires around. I'm going to pop the cruise control wires out of here. So this is going to be repurposed as a check light. And this one over here is going to be repurposed as one of the comms initiators. That's a flash word for the day, isn't it? Initiator. Oh, I got that wrong. So this is actually going to be the check light. The other one was the comms initiator. Let's wait a moment. It's different. Oh, look. This one actually has a check light in there. All right, T2. There it is there. So that's VF1, T2. Had the wrong hole. And there. I now have all the ones that I need. Option 1 can come out completely. getting late. I'm in the wrong hole again. There we go. That's option 1's come out. And there's the fuel pump bypass. I might actually use that. That can go, so there's a fuel pump bypass here. So what these have is a circuit that if you get stuck out in the middle of nowhere, or anything goes wrong with your fuel pump circuit, the fuel pump resistor, you can bypass a lot of it by bridging plus B and FP in the diagnostic box. So I've just run that one. That one's here. Can come out with the fuel pump wires. That's leaving me diagnostics option, which is leaving. But what I'll do is I'll use that one to pull my other wires through. So I'll join onto it and it'll just pop the wires through, the extra wires I need to run. And I've got this big earth, which I haven't worked out what I'll do yet. Can go over with the fuel pump wires for the moment. It's getting late. I'm going to call it quits for a little bit and come back into this tomorrow. Pretty happy with the progress. We have the whole right hand side of the engine loom done under the bonnet. We've got the grommet changed. All the gearbox wiring has been removed for the moment. We've got that plug repinned. We've got a few wires left over here. Tomorrow I will grab some of the factory wires out of here because they're still in good order, strip some of that out, feed them into this loom for the gearbox, do down this side of the engine, make sure I put those 2 diff wires in, and we'll have a loom that'll look like it wants to plug in.